Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo Chapter 9 details are here, so strap in and spoilers beware. All right, y'all, before we dive in, they actually handled things a little bit differently this week. Normally they offer the rough translations for literally everything that happens in the chapter, but this time they offer just more of a summary of what happens, and I'm not sure why they changed. It might be because there were some pretty bad mistranslations last chapter. Maybe they got some pushback for that. I don't know. But so we don't have our kind of line by line thing here, but I kind of like this more because then we can kind of save the line by line review for the official release. So, anyways, this is more of a summary and again, not like an exact retelling of the chapter. So, just a heads up. All right. So, the chapter actually begins with just some lore drop from the narrator about the Sumerian people's third eyes and specifically how it channels their life energy, which is called Rolukla, but again, rough translation there. So, we're just going to call it life energy for now. And it says that for most of the tribes, it's merely a weapon or a source of their strength. But for the Romelian tribe, aka like Maru and Cross, it holds deep emotion. And they alone can shed tears from this third eye when mourning the death of a Kalkyan or a Karyan, that beast that we learned about in last chapter that actually, devours people that aren't Romelian. From here, the chapter properly begins. And if you recall, last chapter ended with everyone celebrating that they had finished this canal, that the relationship with the Diskunte people had been strengthened, trade was going to reopen. Everyone was basically just happy and celebrating until news broke that one of these Karyan beasts had actually killed and eaten one of the Diskunte chieftain's daughters. So we pick up with that news being dropped once more, and we basically see Dura like reacting to this, and they realize that these beasts, which now in this translation is saying had been sealed long ago beneath the earth, wasn't truly contained, and their mining work that had been going on disturbed the seal, basically releasing one of these things and triggering disaster. So now the Diskunte demand like retribution for this, and they want blood, and they want part of the Romelian tribe's mines as compensation. Like, they're really upset, obviously. And if the Romelians refuse to give in to their demands, that could only mean one thing: war. So Dura is sitting here just thinking about all of this and how they often have this kind of ritual ceremony of combat in order to decide things like that. It's kind of like a trial by combat, if you will. So each tribe will basically choose one representative, and those two will fight in a one-on-one duel. And whoever wins, that kind of decides the outcome. Your objective is the one that must be followed because you won. And the loser must acknowledge the other side, and the dispute ends there. This next part is extremely text heavy, and like I said, they just provided a rough summary, and I honestly don't think it's a great summary here. So here's what I'm gleaning from this. We basically have a long discussion amongst the Loomelians, after they learn of this between Dura, Maru, Cross, Jabura, like all of them are talking about what to do. And essentially that leads into Dura being the representative to go into this trial by combat. And we see that Dabura is the Diskunte representative. And this all takes place in like this massive coliseum. And we see this older Diskunte who clearly is like a king. And the two of them basically step into the coliseum, not the king, Dura and Dabura, to fight. And then there is basically a couple of pages of Dura just like speaking to the entire crowd, basically pleading with them, being like, I know there was this horrible incident that took place. But what he kind of alludes to, and again, rough translations, and this is my own kind of attempt to go through it here, but what he kind of alludes to is that this isn't actually about what they're making it about. Like, yes, we kind of have like our different cultures and our different religions, and obviously what happened with the daughter was a horrendous accident, but there's these minds that we have, and I think this is more kind of like an economic thing because the Diskunte tribe gains massive profits from this thing extracted from our minds. And really, we are much more similar than we think. Like, we're all just people on this planet. Like, we don't have to let this divide us. Like, if you call this a religious war because you hate us because this Kalyan killed, your chieftain's daughter, like, we obviously don't want that either. Like, don't let them make this something it isn't. Like, we're neighbors here. Like, let's live together peacefully. And he basically is just trying to give this impassioned speech, and there's nuance there, I'm sure, that is being lost, but basically saying, like, hey, like, we have to coexist. Like, let's be neighbors. And after his impassioned speech, the king, who's just, watching from his throne, just says, Dura, begin. At this point that we just cut to crowd reactions, and they're all horrified. Maru and Cross, Jabaloma, they're all just like wide-eyed and like, what just happened? And Maru freaks out. He goes, what are you doing? And he like jumps up and leaps down toward the Colosseum, but Cross leaps up and grabs his head and kind of like slams him into the ground, preventing his brother from making like a horrible mistake. And it's then that we cut to see Dura's bloodied body just on the ground of the arena, and Dura seemingly without a scratch. It's here that basically Maru is screaming and upset because Dura like didn't try, like he didn't use his full power. He basically just like let himself get killed, refusing to engage in this battle. And that's why he's so upset. And here again, it's rough, and I think they're kind of missing some things here, but essentially what's revealed is that either Dura and Dura were already really close friends, like due to some, like combat in the past where they met each other, and so like they had a lot of respect for one another, or it's just this moment alone that made Dura have a bunch of respect for Dura. Either way, the kind of takeaway here is that Dura's like act in this moment kind of like got through to him, and he has a lot of respect for him. But regardless, like, the Discunte won, right? Dura has been killed, so they're the ones that are deemed correct in this conflict. And essentially what happens from here on out is there is a funeral for Dura, and there's a bunch more dialogue that, again, has not been translated, but I think they're just reflecting on his legacy. But since the Discunte win, they basically continue to take economic advantage of the Lemurian tribe. Dura, again, having been moved by Dura, tries to broker peace amongst his people, but they don't listen to him. And basically, war is looming once more. But even in the face of all of this despair, there is a glimmer of hope when the Romelians discover a new, purer crystal in some of their mines. So something beyond even what they'd always been doing. And I think this might connect back to what we learned about that third eye tier. I can't guarantee that, but it would feel like a natural kind of looping back around point. In any case, they find this new, even more powerful crystal, like, this sacred energy that, kind of is found here or whatever, right? And basically this power like reminds them of Dura's wish for harmony and renewal. And I think the takeaway here is like this new power is kind of what enables this technological advance into space travel, from what formerly had been like a less technologically advanced society. And so instead of like the looming war between the Discunte, they're like, let's take this new power that we have and just get the hell out of here. Like, let's look for a new world and new neighbors. And essentially, Dura is like, I will accompany you on this and protect you guys. Like, that is the least I can do in service of this harmony. And the chapter ends with basically them deciding, like, let's do this. Okay, this was a really interesting chapter, and I think this is really going to cook on Sunday when we get to go into it proper. But, essentially we have this, unfortunate accident with the Discunte's chieftain's daughter that leads to a trial by combat. Dura makes his impassioned plea, but, he's not able to do anything about it. So he refuses to fight. He gets killed. The Discunte win the conflict. They keep taking further advantage of the Lumerians, but this strikes through to Dura's heart. Like, it gets to him, right? And then we see that they find this mineral, and so they're like, we're out of here going to space, right? And Dura vows to protect them. Now, that all makes sense, but I do think there's lots of room for nuance there that we're missing. So, let's wait and see if there's more details there, because this would mean that, yes, their kind of homeworld was destroyed by their like internal strife and conflicts, but this would mean it wasn't literally destroyed. It's just that, like, hey, we can't solve this conflict, so we're leaving to go find somewhere else to live, which could make sense, but, that would mean there was no like literal world ending disaster, as it were. Anyways, I don't think it makes too much sense to speculate too much when there's so much kind of murkiness surrounding the exact details here. So I'm going to leave it there for now, but I really like this chapter. And maybe that's silly to say with such rough translations, but we kind of can piece together the general sense of what happened and where this is going. And I've said this once before, I'll probably say it again, but Gege is just in his bag with this story. I love the things he is dissecting here. So y'all let me know your thoughts. And as always, thank you for watching.